Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today, and welcome to today's Insights session on essential communication skills for engineers with Roger Grannis. Before we begin, I'd like to cover a few housekeeping items. This session is being recorded, and within a few days, you will receive an email with both the slides and the recording. You can ask questions using the Q&A box on your screen, and Roger will answer as many questions as possible during his presentation. My name is Michelle, and I oversee the education and professional certification products and services at the IEEE Computer Society. Our insider session focuses on essential business skills designed to help you excel in your current roles and support your career growth. Again, joining us today is Roger Grannis, a communications expert who helps technical professionals explain complex ideas with clarity and impact. With over 30 years of experience, including building a Gartner sales training academy, he now leads a GrannisGroup working with organizations to boost revenues and engagement. Known for his energy and humor, he's a TEDx speaker and author of the Yellow Cake Principle. Roger, with that being said, thank you for presenting today, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Michelle. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I know we've got a worldwide audience, which I love to know about. And you probably can't read this little sign, but it does say, I love IEEE. We've been working together for, I think about 5 years. And Scott and Michelle have all kinds of great programs that have been recorded from me and other presenters. So be sure to check out their database to help you with all of your business skills needs as you go about your jobs, your careers, your lives. Anyway, we're here today to talk about essential communication skills for engineers. And I want to begin with a story. So that is a lawn. So I grew up in the San Francisco area. I come to you today I'm about an hour from New York City here in Connecticut, but I grew up in the San Francisco area where our backyard had all the yards had very small lawns. And when I was 13, decided I wanted to start a lawn mowing business, go out and mow neighbors' yards, earn some money, and start saving for what have you, car, dates, vacations. And so all I had to do was go knock on a few doors. I had the lawnmower. I had strong enough to do it. All I had to do was knock on a few doors and ask them if I could mow their lawn for money. And guess what? I was too scared. I was too shy, hiding in my bedroom. Maybe some of you relate to this. So I thought, hey, I've got an idea. I found at the toy store a toy printer. This is actually it's a picture from eBay of the actual printing press that I had. You put little rubber letters on the round drum over on the right, and then you'd crank a roll of paper through, and it would pass over some black ink. The letters would, and you'd get the flyer. So I actually made flyers, and I found this. I'm going through my house, cleaning up old things. Here is my flyer. Important. Relax on weekends. Have Roger Grannis mow your lawn. Here's my phone number. Call now. Guess what? I never gave them out because I was so afraid of rejection. I didn't know what to say if they call. So the business never took off. I got a couple of jobs. People knew me and asked me, but I never proactively went out. So shame on me. So how do we go from there, long time ago, to today, where I'm now teaching people communication skills? Well, I vowed I would overcome this challenge, and I have spent my life and career learning how to communicate with others, how to be influential, how to be nice, how to be clear, how to be persuasive, how to get business. So I've gathered the best of the best tips today, and I'm giving them to you, called Essential Communication Skills for Engineers. Now, we use communication in a lot of ways, and it's not always pretty. It does not go well, despite our best efforts. Here's an example. So I live in a hilly area in Connecticut, which is a state in the United States. And one of my neighbors a few years ago wanted to plant 50 trees on the hill behind his house so he could be as a screen, right? So he wouldn't have to be looking into the neighbor's yard. And so he did a little research, and he found a place that sold the trees at a very affordable price, and he ordered 50 of them. And then he rented a truck and with a trailer, and he drove 2 hours to the nursery, place where the trees were for sale. And he drove up to the gate, and there was a guard there and said, "What are you here for?" And he said, "Well, I'm Bob. I'm here for my 50 trees." And the guard said, "We've been expecting you, Bob," and handed him, Bob, a bag, a little baggie. That was a big bag. He's like, a couple feet by a couple feet. And Bob said, "What's this?" And the guard said, "Well, those are your trees." The trees were seedlings, 50 trees in a bag. Bob did not need the trailer due to the miscommunication of how big the trees were. Now, here's a more serious example. You may have heard of the Mars Climate Orbiter back in 1998. NASA ordered this, and their specs were written in the US measurement system. But the builder, Lockheed Martin, built it's a little more complicated. I think it was the software that they used. Anyway, one NASA program, NASA's specs were in the US measurement system, feet, miles, and so forth. And Lockheed Martin was using metric. So upon entry into the Mars atmosphere, a $193 million project burned up on in the atmosphere. So just because of a simple miscommunication. So communication is not always pretty, but it is always important. Here in the engineering world, here are some statistics. When hiring, the National Association of Colleges and Employers says that communication skills is one of the top 3 attributes employers seek every year. LinkedIn says the number 1 most in-demand soft skill is communication. IEEE and ASME, which is the Mechanical Engineering Association, says that poor communication is one of the biggest obstacles to promotion. Strong technical skills get you in the door, but communication is what gets you ahead. So true in relationships. You look at the number one of the top reasons that long-term relationships, such as marriages, don't last is due to poor communication. So communication is super important if you didn't already know that. So how do we as engineers use communication? Well, in conversations one-on-one with our peers, our employees, our customers, our suppliers, our managers. When we're giving presentations, we've got to be effective presenters, effective communicators. When we're collaborating with teams, communication is absolutely key. And of course, in our written communication, whether it's an email, specs, job orders, what have you. So we're going to focus on some fundamental, foundational communication skills today, and then apply them as best we can in each of those 4 situations. All right. So buckle up. Here we go. All right. Let's start with a poll. Which communication situations do you most want to improve? So for this, Michelle, I think we need to go to polling. So if you'll click on my screen, it's in the upper right corner. And you've got to take the poll there. Click on the polling tab. And we've got some answers coming in here. All right. So we've got about 55% conversations, 48% collaboration, a little bit of presentations, a little bit of written. So what I'm seeing is we really want to focus heavily on conversations. All right, so we've got a few more people taking the poll, but conversations comes in at 65%, collaboration 16, presentations 10. All right, so that tells me, your host today, your instructor, that we want to spend the majority of our time applying this to conversations. Thank you. All right. Thank you. All right. Now, if you have questions as we go, if you'll kindly type them in the Q&A. All right. Okay. Okay, thank you. So let's just be candid. So somebody mentioned that some of this content feels like we've covered it before. Yes, some of this is reinforcing what we've covered before, and it's certainly your choice to log off. I have put a lot of time into bringing in some new content as well. So here we go. Okay, the three essential ingredients for good communication are these three. Number one, think of this as a three-layer cake. At the bottom, we've got connect. We want to connect with the person we're talking to. So, and we'll go into detail for each of these. Second, understand. We want to understand what's important to the other person, what are their priorities in life. We want them to feel heard and understood. And then finally, when it comes time to make our case, to present an idea, uh, motivate them to take action, we want to present our content in a way that they'll say yes easily. Okay, just checking the questions here. All right, keep them coming. Thank you. And Michelle, please keep an eye to see if there's something. Some of these are about general, is this being recorded and so forth. And others are just talking about the polls. Anyway, keep an eye out, Michelle, if you would, and let me know if there are questions. Feel free to ask as we go. All right, let's dig deeper into the first step, which is make a connection. Ultimately, the person we're talking to or the audience that's in front of us wants to know why they should invest time with us. They're busy. They're thinking about all of the things going on in their life, their priorities, their family, their work objectives. They are not thinking about us. So we've got to get their attention. We've got to make that connection with them. And in my experience, you've got about 3 seconds to say something to hook them, to say, I'd like to get my mind off what I've been talking about and on to what you have to say. That 3 seconds buys you 10 seconds to engage them further. If you hold their attention for another 10 seconds, you can hold them for another 30 seconds. Anyway, you get the idea. You've got a little bit of time to get their attention, and then you've got to constantly keep them engaged. Now, I did a research study a few years ago talking to the top producers at a Fortune 50 financial services company. These are salespeople. And I asked them, how do you connect with people? How do you turn a stranger into a friend? How do you get an appointment? And they all consistently said two things. One, we find something in common and bring something of value. All right. So a few years ago, my wife and I sold our cottage next door. We had bought it many years ago because we don't have a big house. We wanted a little more room. Anyway, it came time to sell the house. So we researched and interviewed 3 realtors to see who we would select to represent the house and sell it for us. The first realtor was highly recommended, but she came into our house and just simply went through her pitch. We did not feel a connection with her, even though she was referred to us by a very good friend. The second realtor we had seen at an open house around the corner a few weeks before, and she was really good. My wife and I already felt the connection with Kate, but she did not have a real estate license yet. And she brought with her her boss named Michael, and he was very stiff and formal. So that connection we had already felt with Kate was pulled apart. The third realtor we brought in was the lowest rated realtor, and her name was Lori. And the minute she walked in our house, she made a connection with my wife and me, and we chose her, even though she was the lowest rated realtor based on the research we had done in advance. How did she do it? Well, she actually used some of the same techniques that those top producers at the Fortune 50 financial services company used. Number one, she paid us a sincere compliment. She said, I really love your house. And it felt sincere. It did not feel like she was just saying it. She also found two things in common. She mentioned the neighbors across the street, that she had done work with them, and that she said, I have a cabin as a summer home that reminds me of your house. And she showed me pictures. So we had those two things in common, the neighbors and a house just like ours. She also brought something of value, which was the original brochure of this lake neighborhood where I live from 1935. So she made a connection. So again, it's really important to connect with people in the first part of a conversation. Or if you're giving a speech, the audience is wondering, why should I listen to you? All right, Nathan's making a comment. If you fail to engage the person within the first 3 seconds, is it worthwhile to keep trying in the same conversation, or should you just wait and try again later? Nathan Huckleberry, great question. Absolutely keep trying. And here's one of the keys that I'm going to dig into a little bit later. But one of the things you want to do in any communication is can keep looking at the person or the audience and ask yourself, are they paying attention? Am I connected with them? So, Nathan, if you fail to engage in the first 3 seconds, try something else. Try something else. And we'll give you some ideas on how to, some other ideas. I think it's right here. All right. Some other ways that you can connect. You can say, hi, good morning. Let's say you're at a conference and you're at the coffee stand with other people milling about. Break the ice. Say good morning to the person next to you. How is your day going? Uh, Maybe you're trying to do business with somebody in another organization. Get referred in. Mention the person's name that referred you in. Julie Johnson suggested I get in touch with you. Find something in common. Maybe research in advance where they went to school. If they went to the same college, you could say that, hey, I understand you went to Ohio State. Or you can look at their name badge. Oh, you're from England. Whereabouts? My daughter lives in England. Again, find something in common. You could pay a nice compliment on their clothes, a project, uh, their background. Maybe ask about them. Let's say you're at a conference. How is the conference going for you? Maybe they're feeling shy, bashful. Your reaching out will help them feel better. Ask for help. Hey, I'm wondering if you could help me. I'm looking for where the lunchroom is. Do you have any idea? People love to help other people. Maybe you could offer help. You see somebody looking for, maybe they look lost or they need a seat. Hey, I'd love to. Would it be helpful if I showed you where to go, took your plate? Can I get you a coffee refill? Maybe ask for their opinion. I'd love to know your thoughts on the last session, or I'd love your input on this project I'm working on. People love to give their advice. Maybe it's a simple observation. Gosh, crazy traffic here. I hope your commute wasn't too bad. Maybe mention something about the weather. Gosh, I'm enjoying the weather. How about you? Maybe just simply introduce yourself. Hey, I'm Bob. Or do them a favor. Maybe they need a seat. These are many other ways that you can break the ice. A lot of times people feel like I'm going to call it the new kid in school. Let's say a person moved across the country and this is their first day in school. They're new to town. They have no friends. If you think that a lot of times in social settings, people feel like that new kid in school and how much they appreciate being invited to a table or somebody reaching out to them and say, "Hey, do you want to play some catch with us out on the playground?" All right. I know most of you want to spend time on the conversation. Just let me touch briefly on how to connect with people in an audience when you're giving a presentation at the beginning. Many ways to do this. You can tell a story. So I opened this talk with a story about the lawn mowing business. And I picked that story because let's face it, as engineers, sometimes communication is what's not most comfortable to us. So I wanted to tell you a story about me and how you and I are a lot alike and that I struggled with communication early on in my life. You could give a case study. Maybe you're trying to sell the audience on adopting a plan. You could begin with a case study about another organization who had the same challenges and how they went about solving it. Maybe a bold statement or a question. So in one of my talks on communications, I start with this question. I say this: guess how much time the average person spends at work influencing, persuading, and convincing other people? 40%. Okay, that's a bold question followed by a surprising statistic. Maybe you want to get the audience involved. That's why I've got uh, polls with you all today. In a live situation, you could say, by a show of hands, how many of you have been frustrated with our phone mail system? Something like that. Maybe you give a quote or paint a picture of a brighter tomorrow about what life will be like after the challenge has been eliminated. Imagine it's a year from now and you go to use voicemail and it's all with voice command, it's streamlined, and there's no more frustration. Wouldn't that be nice? Well, today I'm going to present a plan on the new voicemail system, blah, 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 blah. And there you go. Again, those are some ways to uh, connect with the audience at the beginning of your talk. Now, how can you do it in email? Um, I was in New York City yesterday with two friends of mine, and they both write for, they're columnists for Forbes magazine. And they said, you would be amazed how quickly people respond to my emails when we put the word Forbes in the subject line. And they simply write, interview you for Forbes magazine. And these CEOs, one of my friends said, we just set the stopwatch and it's seconds how quickly they respond. So you want to use that subject line as a way to connect with people, to hook them, to get them to open the email and read it. In the subject line, maybe you want to mention somebody that you know in common, Julie Johnson, or the college or university you went to, Purdue as an example, or a project they're working on, right? Maybe they're working on a new airport terminal for the Cleveland airport. So that's hook them with the subject line, and then in the body start with, you're going into a little more detail. Hi, Bob. Julie Johnson suggested I contact you. Or, Bob, I'm a recent double E from Purdue. Or, dear Bob, I understand you're bidding on the Cleveland airport terminal. You see this? So the subject line is that 3 seconds. Okay, I'm interested. The body is that next 10 seconds. Say something that's going to keep them engaged, and then go into the detail. All right. We've talked for a little bit today. I'd love you to type and do it in the Q&A. Just keep your comments in the Q&A because I know you've got that tab already open. What's one idea based on what we've talked about so far that you will use to better connect with people? Now, I know a lot of times we don't get a lot of response, but if a couple of you could take the time, we'd sure appreciate it. All right. Any thoughts? Is it finding something in common? Thank you, Raj. Hello, everyone. Welcome. All right. Not a lot of common interest and provide value. Thank you, M. Usman. Great. Okay. Taking time to establish a connection before you get into the main discussion. Thank you, Nathan. Much appreciated. Good. Yes, I mean, the topic at hand is so important to us that oftentimes we'll launch into the details way too fast when the person has not been convinced that they should listen to us or even know what we're talking about. Breaking the ice organically is key. Robert Wells, thank you. Finding common interests has always worked for me. The email focus, Sean, thank you. All right, great. Thanks for participating. Let's move on to the next. All right, so we're talking now about the second layer of the cake, the second foundational piece of good communication, and that is understanding. Now, here's something that I learned far too late in my journey, and that is this. This is a universal human truth that I think helps all of us with our communication. Aristotle said this: nothing is more affirming to the human spirit than being understood. Understanding is the key to influence. What does that mean? It means all sorts of things. When we're communicating, our goal should be to help the other person feel heard and understood. Let's talk a little bit more about that. So, as an example, if you have not read Steve Jobs' biography, it is one of the best business books I've ever read. In it, he talks about how he met the woman that he eventually married and why he fell in love with her. It's because she got me. A television host here in the States said, I care that people get me. I want to be understood. In my local newspaper, front page news, I was heard. So, in any situation, this is the simplest way to think about it. You want to find out what's on people's minds and in their hearts. What is on their list? Everybody's got a list. You go to the grocery store, you've got a list. When my kids were younger, they had a list for me. Here it is: things to do with dad, play with us, do whatever with Sandy, my wife, get work done, do errands, work out, do your own things, take naps rarely. They had a list for me. When my wife and I were worn out from raising kids, I was working too hard. We became strangers in our own house. We sat down and I said, what do I need to do to be the best husband for you? I found out what was on my wife's list. She said, daily hug, weekly activity, do projects together. Now, if I had not asked, I would have thought diamonds, dinners, and dancing. Do you see those on her list? No. Guess what, folks? Do not guess what's on somebody else's list. You've got to ask and find out. Because when you do that, not only do you find the list, but they like you because you took time to listen. So listen. How do you find out the list? You ask questions, listen, and confirm back so that they feel understood. That, folks, you mentioned, most of you said, I want to learn how to be a better communicator. This is the secret right here. Get people talking about themselves, be genuinely curious, and listen what they have to say. All right. Sunil has lost the audio and video, but it's working for Nathan. Nathan, thank you for letting Sunil know. So it sounds like it's working for everyone else, except Sunil. So hopefully that comes back. Now, imagine we've made that connection. We're starting to feel some rapport. And now it's time to begin asking questions, but you don't want the person to feel like you're interrogating them, like you're an attorney or a barrister, asking questions. They might not be ready to open up yet. So you might want to say something like this. I call it a conversational header. I'd love to learn more about your vision for the XYZ project, whatever it is, so that any recommendations I make are aligned with your goals. Is it okay if I ask you a few questions? Something like that, not these exact words, but the concept is saying something that's going to transition from that break the ice talk to, hey, I would really love to learn more about how you did this. Do you have 5 or 10 minutes now to explain it to me? And I've got a couple of questions. They're going to love it. They'll say yes. Or they'll say, you know what? I'd love to do it. I'm super busy right now. I think I can be more focused if we schedule an hour, another day this week. Let's look at our calendar. But this is a very polite way to do it, makes them feel good, and it sets them up to be ready to give you information. Now, there are two types of questions, and these are really important. Even if you've heard this concept before, People forget this, so I just want to emphasize how important this is. One, they're tactical questions, which we as engineers are really good at. How soon, how many, how big, how much money, and so forth. Nothing wrong with these questions, but we want to also ask strategic questions, which are broader, open ended questions that get the other person talking. Tell me about your vision for this. What are your top three strategic priorities? If we could do this, how will that impact this project? See the difference? Strategic questions are powerful for three reasons. One, people don't like to be sold or told what to do, but they do like to be invited into buy. People buy with emotion. They make decisions based on emotion and then justify those with logic. Both are at play, but as engineers, we often forget that emotion uh, is part of decisions. And then thirdly, strategic questions are really strong because they help build long-term relationships. Now, you may decide, you know what, I don't need a long-term relationship. I just need to get something done. Fine. Make a connection, ask your transactional, your tactical questions, and move on. Nothing wrong with that. But if your goal is to build relationships, be the go-to person, get promoted, then I urge you to ask strategic questions. Strategic questions are broader, open-ended at the top of the funnel. Tactical questions are a little more narrow focused. Here's some examples. If you could wave the magic wand and implement the perfect software, security system, whatever it is, what would that look like? If you could wave the magic wand and have the perfect employee for the job I'm interviewing for, what traits would that person have? Then they'll describe them to you. How is this impacting your business? What's the downside if this doesn't get addressed? I want to highlight that second question because it gets people to share their pain. What happens if we don't implement this solution? Get them feeling the pain because then they'll be more apt to say yes to you and your proposal once you do that. Here's a question that encourages them thinking about a brighter tomorrow. Imagine it's a year from now and this issue's been solved. What does life look like from that perspective? You see how all of these strategic questions get people thinking. That's what we're aiming for. Speaking of getting people to think, now I don't know about you in your family, however you define that, even if you're not in a relationship, you've got cousins, nieces, nephews, aunts, uncles, parents. We tend to ask the same question every time. What's new? How was your day? How was school today? And people always answer fine, right? Because we're not asking strategic questions. If we want to keep those relationships alive, we want to get more creative. Ask strategic questions, questions that get people to think. What was your happiest moment today? What made you laugh? If you could do one thing over today, what would it be? What were you proudest of today? If you could invite one person to dinner tonight, who would that be? Again, these are just examples, and I believe in keeping family relationships strong, and one of the ways to do that is to ask creative questions. So that's my little editorial for the day. All right, type in the Q&A. What has worked for you? And we're using the presentation example first. How can you help people feel understood when giving a presentation? Now, this is a strategic question for you. I'm asking you to think a little bit here. What's worked for you in the past? Or perhaps there's an idea that's come up in our time together so far that you feel you could apply to you giving a presentation. How can you help them feel understood? Any ideas? I'm counting on you. Nathan, Robert, Sunil. There we go. When they ask questions, right? Perfect. So when they ask, Right. You could say at the beginning, you've gotten their attention. By the way, I want this to be an interactive presentation, and I encourage you to ask questions throughout our time together. Just raise your hand and then encourage them, and then you can repeat their question, get their nodding, say, yes, that's exactly it. Right. Syed said, acknowledgement. Absolutely. There are many ways we can acknowledge them during the presentation. We could even ask questions. Is this making sense so far? Any thoughts on how this could apply to you? Or let's take a minute, turn to the person sitting next to you and share one idea that's come out of this presentation that you can use. Um, right. Sean says, I don't need to tell you this. Great. Um, Nathan says, I like to gauge the skill level of the audience at the beginning. Perfect. And empathize with them during more complex components if they're unfamiliar, or emphasize interesting parts if they are familiar. That is brilliant. Nathan, bravo. Again, know your audience, gauge their skill level, certainly speak to their level. And then if you've got to move into something that's beyond their skill, say, now I'm going to go a little bit deeper into X. And I know this may be new material for you. I understand. I'm going to try to make it simple, but please speak up if I'm getting too technical, something like that. So bravo, Nathan. Thank you. Great answer. All right, let's continue on. Here are some other ways to engage the audience to help them feel understood during your presentation. Do a survey before. So what Nathan said, gauge their skill level. You could even survey the audience before your talk. Even talk to two or three people who will be there. State the situation or their challenge. We're here today to talk about the challenge we've been facing about X. Are we all in agreement that this is our number one priority? Boom. Uh, Make sure you stay focused on the topic or the issue or the challenge. Speak at their level, which is what Nathan just said. Use their language, right? A lot of times people use acronyms or technical words that the audience may not understand. When I was at Gartner, the technology research company, all of the presentations, no matter what the audience level, if one of the technical experts used an acronym, they were instructed they always had to say what the letters of the acronym meant. CPU, Central Processing Unit, something like that. Use appropriate eye contact and body language. And of course, always monitor the audience to make sure they're paying attention. All right, we're going to ask you another question. I'm counting on you. Get out your typewriter fingers. Here we go. How can you help people feel understood in group meetings? Let's say you're on a Zoom call, or you're in a group, a team meeting, working on a project together. How can you help people feel understood in that situation? You know what? And I'm going to expand it because I know we want to focus a good portion of our time on conversation. So let's say in group meetings or in one-on-one conversations. All right. Lakshay said, oh, good answers here. Acknowledging and summarizing what they say. Yes. Susan just mentioned this, and then paraphrase, repeat back. Maintain eye contact with everyone. Yes. Ask questions about their areas of responsibility. Brilliant. At the beginning of the meeting, maybe you could have everyone introduce each other. Tell us who you are, how long you've been with the organization, and what your area of responsibility is. Beautiful. Nathan, watch the level of communication from each person and ensure that each person's viewpoint is heard. Nathan, you're brilliant, buddy. Yes. So have you ever been in a meeting where, let's say there are 10 people and one or two people dominate, they talk the whole time? Well, that's not a good thing, because the people who may be shy or afraid to speak up never get a chance to be heard. So make sure the leader of the meeting gives everyone a chance to speak up and say something like, "Hey, we haven't heard from a number of people yet. Let's hear one key idea from each of the five people." Okay, and then let's go around the room. Um, yep. Uh, Rishba says, "Ask feedback on the topic discussed." VJ, ask for ask for input. Absolutely, get their opinion. Saeed said the same thing. Sean, summarize for what they said back to them. Right, summarize what you've heard. Invite everyone involved. Yes. Thank you, Zan. Jonas, make sure to encourage individuals to speak out their thoughts, particularly the more quiet people. Absolutely. William, adopt their terminology. Yes. Adopt their terminology in your communication. Bravo. Yes. Good job, all of you. Thank you. All right. I think we've covered those. Listen without jumping in to fix, paraphrase and confirm, ask clarifying questions if you're not sure yourself, acknowledge their perspective. And we heard that, and allow everyone a chance to share. Yes. All right. So we've covered connect, understand. Now let's talk about how we present our ideas, whether we're in a communication, collaboration, presentation. Here we go. All right. If we look at the three layers of the cake from the top, let's say we moved a camera above the cake, took a picture looking down, you notice that present is a lot smaller than the others. It's a target. It's like a target. So what we want to do is be on target when it comes time for us to present, whether we're in a conversation, collaborating, or presenting. We want to be on target. Now, when I was in high school, so in the US, that's age roughly 13 to 18, before university, before college, my mother made my sister and me take a lot of technical classes: math, chemistry, physics. My sister did great. She was a valedictorian. She loved math, chemistry, and physics. I didn't like them because the instructor, the teacher, didn't connect with me, didn't explain why these classes were important. What would I use these concepts for in the real world? So I was bored. I got through the classes, but I did not excel. I really wanted to take a class in auto mechanics, and I did. Finally, my last year of high school, when I was 18, my mother let me take it. And that's the teacher, Mr. Rupel. It was the best class ever because he knew how to connect with restless teenage boys with short attention spans, and he knew how to explain complex concepts in simple, clear terms. I learned more about math, chemistry, and physics in the application of a car than I did taking classes in math, chemistry, and physics. That's exactly what we need to do as engineers when we're explaining our concepts to other people. Now, we might be explaining them to engineers who are equally technical and they understand all of our knowledge, but as somebody said earlier, we've got to know our audience and use their terminology. So here are some ways to simplify our message. Focus on what's important to them, their challenge, their opportunity, their goal, their job assignment. Resist the temptation to go off on tangents with all of that great technical knowledge we have. Focus on solving their problem. You can lead with a headline: bluff, bottom line up front. Um, for example, you could say at the beginning, we can cut page load by 40%. Reduce and synthesize. Albert Hitchcock, the famous movie conductor and movie director, once said, "Drama is life with the dull bits cut out." If you want to create drama, if you want to have high impact for whoever you're communicating with, cut out the dull parts. I know as engineers, we like to share all that technical stuff will put the other person to sleep. Next, have 3 key points. Microsoft used to have something like 97 internal objectives that all of their employees had to follow. They had high anxiety and high turnover, and a consultant came in and said, one of the reasons you're losing people and they're so anxious on the job is because you have too many corporate objectives they have to follow. Reduce it to 3. And so they did. Clarity, energy, success. See how that's got a nice poetic rhythm? Easy to remember. Some more. Use a memorable phrase. If it doesn't fit, you must acquit. Explain complex things using analogies or metaphors. An API rate is like a toll booth. As we've already talked about, use their language. If they're not technical, don't use jargon, use plain words. For example, the term asynchronous replication, what does that mean? Means updates happen in the background. Now I get it. Use visuals. A picture is worth 1,000 words. Tell stories. Stories are the most powerful form of human communication. So slip in a story. Throughout this talk, I've used several stories: the auto shop story, the lawn mowing stories. All right, let's go to a poll. So now we'll flip over to the polling tab. Yeah, car always runs better after rebuilding the carburetor. Yes, Victor, thank you. All right, let's go to polling. What simplification techniques work best for you? Here we go. I see some answers coming in. Thank you. All right. Number 1 so far is have 3 key points. Good. That's great. Explain with an analogy or metaphor. Replace jargon with plain words. I'm gonna let these are all moving around, so it's like a horse race here for number 1. I'm gonna let that settle down here for a second. All right, Michelle, seems like we've reached the critical mass there. All right, number 1 is have 3 key points. Bravo. Replace jargon with plain words has moved into first place. So running neck and neck at our horse race, have 3 key points and explain with an analogy or metaphor or replace jargon with plain words. Yes, absolutely. Great. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you for participating. We've talked about tailoring the content. Again, as engineers, what I see when I work with technical folks like yourselves is that we provide too much information and it's not the right information and we're not using the right terminology. So again, always think about who you're talking to. Think about how you can simplify. So for example, if you're communicating with a senior executive, you want to know how this is going to impact the bottom line. What is this? What at a very high level, how does this project impact the things they care most about, which are the overall organization's objectives, not how the software works and all that. They don't need all that level of detail. With peers, you can go into technical depth. If you're talking to end users, they want to know, how is this new security system, this new voicemail system, how does it work? How will this impact my daily day-to-day work? So again, really think through the audience in all situations. We've talked about this in detail before. There's another program on the 4 languages of influence. But remember and reiterate, and I've taught this to people over and over, and they still come back for reinforcements because this is one of the key foundations of good communication skills, to remember that there are 4 distinct communication styles. Up in the upper left, The steadfast want bullet points and bottom line. In the upper right, the outgoing people like Robin Williams, they want to talk about fun, possibilities. In the lower right, somebody like Mother Teresa, they care about relationships and people. So they want to know, how is this going to help us retain employees? How is this going to help us reduce friction among our employees? Then the detailed oriented folks in the lower left, like Barack Obama, Bill Gates, lots and lots of facts and details. This is where we find most engineers. Now, one of the key things is to remember who is in the diagonal opposite corner. That is your weak spot. And just to reiterate, you've got to work extra hard to speak to the people in the uh, with the communication style in the diagonal opposite corner. All right. Again, if this is like, wow, I urge you to go look at the database of sessions and watch that one, because it's super helpful. All right. We've got to also read our audience, whether we're talking to people one-on-one or in a group setting, presentation. Check in. Is this making sense? See if they're listening. Now, sometimes people may have a serious face, and you might be concerned that you're not making sense or you're making them mad. I have found that that is often inaccurate. That simply means they're really concentrating. So if you're really concerned, you could go up to them, ask afterwards, and say, "Hey, how was this talk? You seem pretty focused. I just want to make sure I wasn't speaking, in terms that you didn't connect with," and then get them to share. And they, "Oh, no, I was really enjoying it," or "It made sense," or what have you. Pause for questions. Um, Ask them to summarize. What are you taking away? And then, of course, be flexible. Don't get locked into your content. You've got to be willing to flex as you go. Also, use your body language. Posture equals confidence. We talked, somebody mentioned earlier, making eye contact. Use your gestures to clarify. Uh, you know, Use your face to be animated, to engage the audience, and then respect their space, especially in one-on-one conversations. You don't want to be too far away, and you certainly don't want to crowd them and be too close to them. I'm going to just go to the Q&A for a second here. Robert, thank you. Do three key points help if they're filled with jargon? If the hmm. So again, I think my simple answer is three key points always help. If the points themselves are acronyms, then you might want to simplify what those mean. If, Robert, you're talking about if the sub bullets under each of those points are filled with jargon, if the audience is not familiar with that jargon, then you need to translate that jargon for them. So jargon for an audience that doesn't understand it, always bad. Three key bullets, always good. Victor said, let the audience connect some dots. Yes, don't say the aha, let them think it first. Right. So this conversation we're having now has been, let's face it, 92% me talking. If this were a live setting with more time, we would have more of you talking, communicating, coming up with answers in small group discussions, and then weighing back in. That's always powerful. So thank you, Victor, for saying that. M says, I'm wondering if you can please explain 2x2 quadrant further. How do you use it in daily interaction? I'm not sure what the 2x2 quadrant is. Maybe M, if you could type that in. Okay. Anyway, some feedback from Robert for the future. Thank you. We'll check that out. Some email best practices, and then we'll wind things up in our time together. State the objective clearly, be concise, use clear language. If you've got a lot of content to cover, make maybe in all caps and bold it, subheadings, so that you're leading the reader through these things. Use a lot of bullets and white space. And if you're writing a novel in email, probably you should think about having a conversation instead of putting it all in email. Okay. Okay, so M is explaining. Oh, if I could please explain the this further. So yes, M. So this is typically a 3-hour workshop. This one slide, but I'm just going to quickly give another quick summary of this as best I can. So here's the net. But again, look for the session online that's recorded that covers this in more detail. I believe it's called The 4 Languages of Influence. So here's the summary. There are 4 distinct communication styles. One style is people like to get to the point. They don't like to waste time. They don't like chit chat. Another person in the called outgoing is fun. They want possibilities. They don't want to be locked into a set agenda. They want to brainstorm together. Another person cares about relationships. So in your communication, you need to slow down your style. Talk about people and how whatever it is you're proposing is going to help people have better relationships. And then the 4th communication style in the lower right, they're the detailed oriented folks, and they want lots and lots of details. So hopefully that gives you a little more information. Again, I'd encourage you to watch that session where we go into more detail on that. All right, here's the quick summary. Secret number 1, interested is interesting. When you're genuinely interested in the other person and get them talking, get them sharing what's important to them, they will think you are interesting. Secret number 2, practice, practice, practice. To this day, you heard my difficult beginning, and I was the kid in speech therapy. I still practice over and over and over. Things get easier with practice, and I happen to love this stuff. Thanks, Em. You're welcome. And then finally, secret number 3, if you really want to communicate well in any setting, add value and lift a burden. Be there to serve others, solve their problems, remove obstacles for them. If you're always thinking that, you will go a long way in having better communication and relieving, making people's lives better. So that's actually me in that picture. I'm holding one of those movie things, take 1, take 2. I always wanted to work on movies. And so a friend of mine who's an actor said he and another friend were making short films. And I said, I would love to be a worker, volunteer on that set. I will buy lunch. I will carry equipment. Is there any way you could talk to the director and let me help? Add value. I bought people lunch and I lifted a burden. So I worked on that movie. The director liked my help so much. I have now worked on 7 of them, and I love every minute of it because I asked, and then I add value and lifted a burden. All right, you can do it. You come today with lots of technical skills, some good communication skills. Hopefully today we've maybe sharpened some that you already have and reinforced some things and perhaps given you 1 or 2 new ideas to help you communicate better as technical experts. Thanks for listening. Poll number 3, this is our final poll. We'll go to the Q&A tab again. I'm sorry, to the polling tab. And it is essentially, what are you taking out of today's session? What idea are you going to sharpen or use? Is it connecting with people, writing better emails, asking more strategic questions, listening better. By the way, listening is probably the most important skill in communication and the hardest. It does not come naturally. You've got to keep working at it. Maybe you'll ask your family something other than, how was your day? Learn more about your audience before presenting. Simplify your message. All right. So answer's still coming in. Making that connection. Right. If you make that connection with people, everything else flows a little bit better. And one way to connect with people is our number 2 whole item, which is listening better. Writing tighter emails. Yeah, I could do a whole session on email writing if we'd like to pursue that. Less is more. All right, so number 1, connecting with people, listening better, and writing emails, followed by asking more strategic questions. All right, thank you all. And I'm Roger. Appreciate you being here. We do speeches, workshops, and webinars. And my book, The Yellow Cake Principle, is on Amazon. If you care to read all the details about this very simple language, it's on Amazon. And if you want to connect on LinkedIn, I'd love to connect, or shoot me an email with any follow-up questions or comments. Anyway, Scott and Michelle, thank you. Let's give it up for Scott and Michelle. They work hard to bring these programs to you. And that's it. Actually, if you have more questions, I'm happy to take them. Thank you. Michelle, I don't know, are you trying to speak?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize I was on mute. I apologize for that.
No, no worries.
Do you still want to wait for more questions, or do you want them to just send you an email afterwards?
I think the questions would have come in. It looks like it's thank you. And I do appreciate the thanks. My father was a lifetime member of IEEE, so I do these in honor of him and because I like you.
That's great. Great. Thank you, Roger. Thank you again, everyone. I do wanted to mention that we have additional sessions coming up in the next few weeks. There's one going to be on September 16th on AI ethics and P3396. Another one on September 18th at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. It'll be titled Leading Hybrid Teams. Again, the registrations for these upcoming events are now open. Again, we will be emailing everyone a link to the future events along with the slides of this recording and the slides and the recording. Thank you again, everyone, and I hope everyone has a great day. Appreciate it.